For some reason, I'm having technical difficulties, of course, right? We'll go back. Actually, okay, so what I'll do is I'll come back at the end to see what people have submitted as to what musical instrument they would love to be able to wake up one day and actually play. But I'm going to go ahead and get back into our presentation just because for the sake of time. Again, my name is Heather Hilz Fitzgerald. I'm within the Romoland School District, and I actually was just honored last night to be accepted in on a assistant principal position within Boulder Ridge Elementary. So I'm extremely excited to continue to work for Romoland and continue to do the great work that takes place here within our district and within our county. And so today with our session, we're really going to be focusing just about the current realities that are taking place based off of our situation with COVID-19 and how we're going to be coming back together as an educational team with our students to help support them. And I'm going to include the closed captioning down here at the bottom if that works. So as we begin to look at school this fall, it's definitely going to be a different reality from what we have experienced in the past. The virtual and online options are going to be ultimately our go-to at the beginning of the school year. And so at this point, we're going to have to really transform our pedagogy into a different type of style, a different type of structure and routine. And so when we reflect back on the closures that took place earlier in March, we noticed that there were lots of concerns as we closed down schools. And so now it's our time to go ahead and reflect on and plan on what type of successful ways are we going to provide for our students to be successful in a virtual world. Some of the concerns previously as mentioned were, just being able to provide families with the type of support they needed at home. And not only does that include the devices that are available to students, but also just giving opportunities for teachers to support families in understanding how to access things on these devices or to log into a Google Classroom, or even just how-tos on keeping students on track during their learning at home. We also saw that a lot of teachers discussed the inconsistency of participation at that time. And so that is then going to be our job as educators to go ahead and really find out what are the needs of our students based on their home life, what are the needs of our students based on their academic abilities, and that way we can drive our instruction that's not only engaging and motivating, but also rigorous, because we do need our students to continue to grow within their academics. And then lastly, just keeping in consideration that idea of what do I need to do continuously to check in with those families so that they are successful. And so that's why we're going to be covering this topic today at first, which is creating that online culture. So the two groups that we're going to be focusing on today, obviously at the forefront is going to be our students, because they are the main reason we get up every day and we, establish these relationships with them in order to support them as lifelong learners. And then the other group that we'll look at is our family group, because at this time we need to work closely hand in hand with these groups of families, guardians, because they're ultimately going to be the first go-to face-to-face support in the home setting when we are providing virtual instruction. So let's go ahead and get into our students. So since we've seen the closures taking place, we've seen that there, like I said before, an extreme transition into what education is going to look like. And ultimately, we're noticing that we're going to have to really support our students to be self-sufficient, self-motivated, and strategic in their own learning. And so one thing I wanted to mention from Google for Education, which is an amazing resource, and when you access this slide deck here within your SCED, a lot of the the items are on here are hyperlinked. So this Google for Education logo here would be hyperlinked for you to read in a little bit further. But ultimately, they are really stating that we need to be able to give our students agency over their education. So pretty much establishing at the forefront that common language, that common expectation amongst the students as to what they are going to need to be successful. And so if we're thinking about getting them engaged and getting them on board with their own learning, we're going to have to do things ultimately that are going to meet the needs of each of those students individually. So that's being aware of what their ability levels are, right? Being aware of what their interests are, what their likes are, and ultimately what their home needs are. And that doesn't necessarily mean every, instructional element that you plan has to be completely individualized, but ultimately understanding that we're providing opportunities for students to access their grade level standards, and then being able to go in and be flexible to modify based on individualized needs. And that's where you're really going to get that, that motivation for students to feel like they have something that's provided to them that's meaningful and that's relevant to them. So feel free to read through that Google for Education snippet. It's really great. It's a worldwide kind of overview of how things are definitely transitioning based on our COVID-19 status. So ultimately, what I've heard from, of the many webinar sessions that I've been attending and just talking with educators out there, we see that one of the most beneficial elements to keeping students engaged and keeping students feeling successful within distance learning is ultimately having that communication with your students, meaning that you're meeting with your students on a daily basis. You're meeting with your students to provide instruction on a daily basis. You're meeting with your students to also go ahead and form small groups, or you're even meeting with your students one-on-one to give that direct feedback so that they can have the self-efficacy skills to support their learning within this virtual world. So some of the apps that I have presented here are obviously, an LMS system such as Google Classroom, which I know many of us are going to be using when it comes to fall, but this is a great place for you to provide feedback within comments. You can provide feedback directly into the assignments. But Google Classroom is going to be a great communication hub for you and your students and your families. We also know that Google Meet will be something that's a consistent element in your pedagogy, because that's how you're going to instruct your students within a synchronous setting. I also think it might be a great idea to include maybe like how-tos during the first couple of weeks, especially for your students grades 3 through 12th grade, of how to access their Gmail account and learning those types of just simple life skills. And the other apps down below here, you have Screencastify, which is a great tool to go ahead and record pre-planned lessons and or to even give feedback. We have Flipgrid, which I always call is like the Snapchat of education, where you can provide feedback to students and students can provide feedback to one another. And then other Google apps such as Google Drawing, Google Docs, Google Slides, all of those are really great tools that are that can be accessed in real time and have collaboration in real time as well. And don't forget that not only are we going to want to discuss academics with our students, but we also want to provide that opportunity for students to have time to talk with their peers in more of a fun setting or more of a non-structured setting, because we are really trying to be aware of the social emotional aspects that are taking place due to the stress that may be happening due to COVID-19, or maybe they just need to have a different voice and a different ear to hear from within their own peer group. So one of the things that I thought was really great that I've noticed that teachers have been, falling upon to make sure that their students are socially and emotionally well, is that just asking on a daily basis, how are your students doing? And so not only does that help support you as an educator to understand what ways might I need to transform the lesson for today, or what ways do I need to gauge my students a little bit differently and maybe provide some different activities for them, or maybe this is a way for me to understand each individual child and to see if I need to reach out a little bit deeper. But this is a really great tool. This is this mood meter here. You may have seen it previously before, but popping that on the screen before a Google Meet, or even including it into some type of Google Classroom activity is a great way for you to go ahead and understand how your students are feeling at that time. I'm going to go ahead and click on this little, hold on, there we go. So this is an example from Romoland School District. My name's Erin Lozano. She also works here at Boulder Ridge Elementary. And I thought this was such a really great tool for teachers just to get a sense of the culture or the climate of how your students are feeling. So think of this either as a daily check-in with your students and or a weekly check-in. I really think having this as a daily check-in through a Google form can also help support you in collecting the attendance that you need as well to show students are accessing on a daily basis. But pretty simple. She just has added some just housekeeping things of understanding how they're sleeping, were they eating right, how are they feeling, are things okay, or is there something that you want to share that you're excited about that you're not able to do, in real life. I remember my students constantly coming back to school over the weekend and sharing the activities that they did with their families, whether they were fun or whether they were bummed about it. But just having that open conversation is going to make them feel wanted, and definitely is going to make them want to be there every day. So feel free to use that if you would like to. Okay, so going back, there we go. The other thing that I want to then transition into, besides that daily interaction, which is going to be crucial to having your students be prepared, be ready to want to learn every day, let's just think about the beginning of the school year. So previously, that was one thing that I know we as teachers constantly would dwell over, get our planning books out and decide upon what are those first few days going to look like with our students. And, you have the ever famous get to know you bingo, or one of my favorites was the spaghetti tower challenge, where you can really work with that culture building with your students. But ultimately, now that we're going to be in a virtual setting where you're not going to have that face-to-face interaction, what types of virtual elements are we going to provide to our students that is going to really mesh everybody together, have everybody feel that they're trusted and supported? So I'm going to go ahead and I actually have a question for you all. And again, I hope this works well, but obviously when we went on closures, we did have to pick up the slack and really transform our learning into a different mode, a different system. And so obviously a lot of us have probably administered different types of culture building activities while we were using distance learning. So if you can go to Mentimeter again, I want to try this one out in this large Zoom environment. But what types of culture building activities have you used while distance learning? And so if we do that during this time that we're together, that's a great opportunity for people to go ahead and share best practices. So I'll go ahead and I will be quiet because I'll just chatter on forever. I'll be quiet for about a minute and see what we get, and hopefully I can share this time. go. There we go. I see. Okay, this is awesome. Hopefully when I go into present mode, it changes. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this. This is really cool. And I feel so bad because like I can't see any of your faces, but I hope they're happy faces. This is great. Look at that. I'm gonna have to record this. I really do. I need to record this in real time so that I could post this on Twitter. But I just love that we're able to, even though not here face to face, where we would be sitting out with our handbooks, our notebooks, our curriculum, we're here to share live with each other what has been working well within your classrooms. And that's going to be great. People are going to really appreciate to see that. I'll take a final picture once we come back. Very cool. Scavenger hunts, definitely. I like the themed Zoom meetings. I like that idea. I saw something about music listening group, classmate shout outs, letters in the mail. That's a great, I think that's amazing. Doing kind of a pen pal activity with students as well. That would be really fun. I always try to establish that in my classroom when we would try to reach out to different states and then pinpoint them on the map as to which schools we connected with. So that was great. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so hopefully you guys will see that within Twitter. I'll go ahead and add the hashtag #IEGoogleCamp along with it. And just keep going. Okay, so I'm going to go back into it. See if I can move that. I think I can go like that. That's better up there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and begin presenting again. So you were able to go ahead and collectively share all of those great activities that you've already been establishing within your classroom. So use those this coming year virtually so that you know you have that engagement from the get-go. But now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to provide some optional activities that might be useful within your classroom as well. Obviously, these ideas might be, not specifically tailored to your grade level, but be open-minded. Think about ways that you can adapt or modify these things based on, your developmental stage of your students, and just like what their interests are as well. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and rely on is going back to referencing EDU protocols. I know many of us are familiar with EDU protocols, and I think during this time period of transition to virtual learning, I think that these instructional strategies are going to be extremely relevant within our work. Why? Because they're so friendly, first off. They're pretty much these graphic organizers, these instructional practices that can be easily translated into your Google Classroom or within a virtual element. And what's great about Book 1 is that they have the beginning section is all about culture building. And I think it's an extremely vital and important part of establishing a school year is taking that time to understand who your students are, get your students understand who each other are, and then allowing for them to even understand who they are. And some of those activities I'll be showing in just a moment will also be a little bit more of an exploratory for who they are as individuals. But feel free to go ahead and click on these. These should all be hyperlinked within your own slide deck. And then if ever needing to reference to the EDU Protocol Fieldbook, I highly recommend purchasing it. And also on their website, they have a lot of free resources. So not only are you developing culture at the beginning of the school year, you're also going to find lots of instructional practices that will be a great support during your school year. The other thing I want to mention too, just because within my school, we are a Leader in Me district, so, sorry, we're just a Leader in Me school, but if you are possibly a Leader in Me school, be thinking about taking the first 8 days into a digital element is going to be extremely beneficial in order to just put everything aside and develop culture. That being said, The other thing that you're going to want to do at the very beginning of the school year is to help develop the norms. And I think at this time, it would be a really great opportunity for you to not only establish the norms that you want as an educator, but I also think it would be great to include your students in collecting what they believe would be high expectations, or even understanding what is relevant to them in their learning process, or what is actually doable for them, because we need to understand what's taking place at their home. We need to understand the environment so that they have the best learning setting that they can have. I also believe that this could be a great opportunity for your families to be included in the conversation as well, because we know that, again, they are going to be extremely important in providing that facilitation of learning at home. So getting all stakeholders on board to agree with these norms at the beginning is a great way for you to have success for the whole school year. So going into one of those activities that is also going to be something that you can rely on for the entire school year would be to develop a classroom mission statement. Again, like I said, here at Boulder Ridge, we are a leader in the school, and so we focus on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of a Highly Successful Person, and it's just transformed into like kid-friendly language. But ultimately, we go and we create mission statements that are going to represent us as a school, as a class, and then we can get even more specific where students can create their own individualized mission statement. And I will tell you that during my time within the classroom, once we had established that mission statement together, and during the school year, whenever there were times when we had the ups and downs and or we just had some struggles at that moment, it was a great opportunity for us to come back, to go ahead and review our mission statement. And I will tell you, there's been so many times that we've had really meaningful conversations with each other, and we really do see a transition into positive work ethic after that, and positive interactions with one another, because we believe in that mission that we had created. I'll also say that with that individualized mission statement, you also are going to be able to extract writing from that. And obviously, if we have the littles, maybe we're just starting with a power sentence that informs us as to what they believe in themselves, or what goal they have for themselves that year. But just establishing that solid mission is going to be something that you're going to enjoy for the entire school year. Another activity that I think is extremely fun, and I think that not only classrooms should engage in this, but I think also staff meetings could be greatly, it would be like a really fun activity. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is your Myers-Briggs personality test. There's lots of different variations because obviously it's been around for a very long time, and we've probably taken this personality test ourselves. But providing this to your students, I know that my previous fifth grade students were able to access 16personalities.com. And it's actually a really cool site because it takes you through, a slew of questions. But once they're done, they do get their 4-letter representation result. And it also will add in like a little character of who they are, gives like an entire page about the type of person they are, and then it connects them even to famous people who have that same personality type. So it's just really fun. So I definitely think that even your 4th graders, maybe even third graders all the way to 12th grade could definitely benefit from this. For the littles, I would search around for maybe a paper-based or like almost like a Google Drawing-like version that includes images, but just understanding that each child is completely unique really resonates with them and makes them feel as if they, matter, and they then begin to explore themselves a little bit more. And I will say that there's lots of cross-curricular activities you could go ahead and do with the personality test. Some of the ideas that I've had for this would be, you know, if you had this personality, write a narrative about the opposite personality of yourself. You could definitely translate this into mathematics, where students could track data as to how many introverts are in the classroom, how many extroverts are in the classroom. And of course, you could do continued project-based learning experiences with either social science or science to continue this, to make it more of a relevant academic activity in your class. So feel free to also take that 16personalities.com test if you've never had, because it's really fun even for adults. The next activity, which is probably one of my favorite activities, is the values activity. And this is a great way, again, for your students to establish what they believe in, and then share those values with others. So this is all included in the slide deck for you all. You'll have this hyperlinked version, values exercise for Model the Way, and I'll go ahead and click on it, see if it'll take it over. And if for some reason at all you're like it's saying that you need access to it, because I try to make everything viewable by anybody. You know, sometimes things don't always turn out as good. Well, I'm glad for information. Just be patient as my inbox gets. So I'll grant permission, to access all of these. So I can take a digital copy of this for students to go in and first, most important values, the next step will then and lastly, then you just choose your top 5. All the academic activities that you could spin off of this as well. You know, have students write a paragraph about who they are. Oh, sorry, that I'm buffering.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We're having some technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and try to get our moderator back in, okay? One moment, please. Hello, Heather. Oh, Heather, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, everybody. I'm back. Too much handles. Right? Okay, so I'm going back, sharing. I'm not going to click on any of my hyperlinks anymore, because I ultimately feel like that is one of the problems. So feel free to access those. Down below as well is the Future of the Classroom Google report, which also highlighted that learning your virtues and values is extremely important, because it develops that emotional intelligence. So go ahead and feel free to read through that as well, because I think that's highly important, especially during this stressful time that we're all in. So the other thing I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys right now is now that you have all of these different activities for your students, now let's go ahead about, well, where to house all of those within the digital world. And one of my suggestions is to use Google Sites as a way to house all of those types of activities and or the results that they get from those activities. So ultimately, Google Sites is a pretty simple tool. A lot of students are very intuitive in the sense that they can pick up on it pretty easily. I suggest, if you've never accessed Google Sites, to make sure that you go into the Google Sites new hub, because it usually takes you to like the previous version of Google Sites. But you go ahead, you create a site, you choose a theme, and then after that you are able to add pages that could include different things. So obviously you have like your values activity taking place, your personality test. And so once you create those pages, it's really easy to upload documents either through your Google Drive. You can upload images. It's just very user-friendly in the sense of creating almost like this online digital portfolio. You could even access things such as Google Slides, if that's user-friendly for your littles, for them to plop in different images or write short little summaries of what they found out about themselves. You could even create a continuous Google Doc as a digital portfolio. And I know a lot of people have also been using something like Seesaw, which I think is extremely beneficial for your TK through even, second grade. But I mean, it could even go up for your bigger kids too. But just having a place to house all of that meaningful work that they did at the beginning of the school year, and then continuing to house that work. So within my own classroom previously, I used the digital portfolios not only just to have a place for them to share all of those things they learned about themselves, but then that was a place for us to house all of their writing that they created, like their finished writing products. You could just go ahead and drop it in over from the Google Doc that they wrote it in. I also would have them have a page that represented goal setting. So a lot of times their goal setting was placed in Google Slides, and we used, iReady diagnostics to track their growth throughout the year. We also used, AR levels to kind of track that growth as well, math fact growth. But it's just a really great place for them to be able to see themselves develop as a student over time, and then even thinking about taking those digital portfolios with them as they move on to the next grade level. And when you're in that slide deck down here, this is going to be a hyperlinked session that I've provided previously in other conferences, but it'll take you deeper into using those Google Sites for portfolios. Okay, so now that we've discussed our students, which obviously are our most important individuals when it comes to, why we're educators and ultimately because we're striving to make them lifelong learners, but now we're gonna really have to start thinking about our other group, which is our families. And so we now need to see that they are going to be an important and vital connection to the learning at home. And it's actually pretty amazing that this has all taken place because I think the growth and development of family bond has heightened. And so it then now shows us that we can make those real connections from learning at home and learning at school. And everybody's on the same page, which is really great. So how do we get our parents engaged? How do we support our parents? Well, first off is that communication rule again. Not only do your students need to be talked with every single day or within a lesson every single day, but your families would appreciate you to communicate with them on a daily basis as well. So you see that we have a plethora of suggested apps here that would be a relevant way to have that two-way conversation with your parents. I myself as a parent really do love and rely on that daily check-in with a teacher, possibly through a Remind or maybe through a Seesaw. But I just like to know that I'm being successful as a parent at home with my child, and ultimately I like to see, you know, what the teacher's thoughts are about the learning in general as well. One idea for the beginning of your school year would also be to have a Google Meet kickoff. So having all of your family members access that at the same time, and that's where students could introduce themselves, you could introduce yourself, you could play games, you can even talk about establishing those norms and what are the needs of your parents at that time in real life. And obviously, if family members can't make that session, then it would be really beneficial for you to record that session and provide it within, you know, your LMS system. An idea from a teacher friend of mine, Kim Vogie, is also being just proactive in the sense of your weekly check-ins with parents. So that means that giving an overview to your parents about what the expectations are for the week is going to be something that is a game changer for your participation in the class. So what she did was she housed a lot of her learning or her weekly learning plans into slide decks. And from there, she would go ahead and just do a quick 2-minute screencastify going over what was expected for students to do on that weekly learning plan. I even say go even further too. Each of the different assignments that you provide to your students should also be connected with probably a video of you explaining as well, because we know we have students who might need language support, students with disabilities, and just students who like to have that verbalized direction. So Screencastify is going to be your best friend during this virtual element, and just being prepared, being planned is going to not only make your life easier, but also your family's life easier. And that's ultimately what we're really trying to do, is to make things easy on them as easy as we can, right, during this time period. Other things that I saw families or teachers doing within their classroom during this time was providing families with surveys on a regular basis, probably like on a weekly basis, just a way to check in and just a way to gauge how is the learning taking place at home. So that way, you as an educator can make the modifications or accommodations to your routines, to the structure, or even to the assignments for each of those individualized students. And ultimately, it really just gives your families a sense of voice and choice during that time period of what they are hoping for the educational experience in a virtual world. And I definitely think that you're going to have a lot of success then in redesigning your classroom if needed through those surveys. So lastly, I'm kind of like quicker than I thought I was going to be, but that's good because then we can do some Q&A. But ultimately, I'm just doing like your overall of what we talked about, and it's all about being realistic, being flexible, and ultimately also being accommodating to your families. Key point is that you as an instructor, your presence has to be there every single day, because not only are you there to provide their academics, but those kids are really looking forward to seeing you as their mentor, as their guide. And so being there every day with the direct instruction, small group instruction, or that one-on-one contact is going to be your biggest support during engagement and motivation with virtual learning. Remember to check in with your students, not just academically, but check in to see how they're doing socially, how they're doing emotionally, and making sure that you are able to provide them with resources possibly, or just lend an ear to hear what they have to say, so that we can help support them with possibly any type of uncertainty that they have at that time. And besides establishing those relationships with your students, then really establishing those relationships with your families, because if you have the families connected with you, then you're going to have the students follow with that. And I just really think that in this time as well, parents need support and guidance as well, because this is all new to them as well. So that being said, I'm extremely happy to have been here to talk to you guys about culture. I apologize for being kicked out through all of my large bandwidth that was going on. But if you would like to access a survey here, that will go personally to my own survey results to see what things that you enjoyed or anything that you suggest for the future. And also remember to go ahead and fill out the feedback for the IE Google Camp SCED. And so what I'm going to do right now is I just kind of want to open it up to us as a or I can kind of go through also some of the things I'm seeing here through questions as well. Sound good? Thumbs up? Yes? Oh, final results for the word cloud. Yes, I saw that. Let's start. Go ahead and I'm going to go into my and I really do think that people Mentimeter. If you looked at that site and logged in and signed up, there's so many different ways that you can go ahead and have an interactive conversation with them. My presentation. Help us with, okay, distance learning, culture building.
I apologize for the technical difficulties. We're going to try to get her back on so she can answer a few more questions. Please be patient. One moment. She is connecting in right now. I do apologize about the connection. Hopefully we should get her in and have some of your questions answered shortly.
Hi, I'm back. Okay, during the time of me pausing, I was able to get the Mentimeter results. So there it is in the chat if you want to go ahead and get that, that final version. So looking at everybody, hey, what's up? So really quick in the chat, would you like to go ahead just talk about, let's go ahead and tell everybody what is the next session you're going to be attending tomorrow, if you want to put that in the chat. It's fun. One of the things that I always do when I go to sessions is I always go ahead and look through the entire sched, and I snatch up every single slide deck that I can, so that I can not only like collect it for myself, but then I go ahead and I share it with all of my you know, teammates and things like that. Last year I was educational tech coach over here at Romoland, so a lot of times I would send it to the entire district, just so that they are, you know, in the know as well of all the different resources that so many great educators are providing to us during these types of educational tech fairs. And so feel free to do that as well. I like that. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Heather. I just wanted to let you know that we have 1 more minute before we have to log off.
Like the one thing that you're extremely see you later. Good luck next school year, and if you need anything, feel free to email me, ask. I will share with you as I can.